30 seconds to
Thanks,
introduce.
Corla. Minister, the question is quite straightforward. What are you going to do about the comments of the UN Human Rights Committee, which roundly condemned Ireland as contributing to the mental suffering of women by failing to address our abortion reality? Those warnings obviously being tragically vindicated quite quickly by the horrific Miss Y case, which showed that the legislation which your government introduced last year does not give a woman whose life is in danger an access to an abortion that she's legally entitled to. So is it not now time to repeal that legislation and indeed repeal the 8th Amendment as suggested by the UN?
Thank you very much. Minister, 2 minutes, please.
As the Deputy is aware, Article 43(3) of the Irish Constitution states that the State acknowledges the right to life of the unborn, with due regard to the equal right to life of the mother, guarantees in its laws to respect and, as far as practicable by its laws, to defend and vindicate that right. The interpretation of Article 43(3) was considered by the Supreme Court in Attorney General v X in 1992. Further, in December 2009, the European Court of Human Rights heard a case brought by 3 women in respect of the alleged breach of their rights under the European Convention on Human Rights in regard to abortion in Ireland. This action was known as the A, B and C versus Ireland case. The Protection of Life During Pregnancy Act 2013 was enacted in July 2013 and commenced in January 2014. The purpose of this Act is to restate the general prohibition on abortion in Ireland while regulating access to lawful termination of pregnancy in accordance with the X case and the judgment in the European Court of Human Rights in the A, B and C versus Ireland case. The Act received very careful consideration by the Houses of the Oireachtas and the Joint Oireachtas Committee for Health and Children, including 3 days of public hearings. The guidance document for the Protection of Life During Pregnancy Act 2013 has now been published. These guidelines are designed to assist professionals in the practical operation of the Protection of Life During Pregnancy Act. The guidance documents includes advice on identifying referral pathways to fulfil the requirement of the Act and ensure that women whose life might be at risk can receive appropriate medical care. I'm not proposing any amendments to the Act or the 8th Amendment of the Constitution at present. In relation to the case known as Miss Y, I'm awaiting the report by the Health Service Executive and hope to receive it as soon as possible. Once I've had an opportunity to review the report, I'll consider if any further action needs to be taken at that point.
Thank you very much indeed. Deputy, 1 minute, please.
It's quite clear we don't need any further reports, although from the drip feed in the media, the information we will get will be quite illuminating. But you see, what you've reiterated in the guidelines, that the purpose of the Act that you brought in last year was to confirm the general prohibition on abortion. It wasn't. It was to legislate for the lawful circumstances in which a woman is entitled to an abortion in this country when her life is in danger. And tragically, the Y case proved that a woman who met that criteria was unable to access her lawful right to an abortion here because of the inadequacies of the legislation that your government brought in. We have doctors and the medical profession operating under the basis of a criminal prohibition, which obviously has a chilling effect. We have the excessive scrutiny by medical professions, which is adding to the mental anguish being experienced by people. And interestingly enough, the UN Human Rights Committee pinpointed the very circumstances of Miss Y when they said the discriminatory impact of that legislation on people who do not have a right to travel. Now, when you add that and the inefficiencies of the legislation to the fact that 160,000 Irish women have had to travel for abortions over the past number of decades, do you not think, in the interests of decency and respect and recognising our abortion reality, that they should have that treatment at home rather than being forced to travel for it?
Thank you. Minister, 1 minute, please.
Yeah, thanks. I suppose a few things. You know, we're all reading stuff in the papers about the Y case, and that's why I actually want to wait for the report, because there's stuff I'm reading in the papers that I don't know anything about. So I'd certainly like to wait to see that report and see all the facts and consider it before jumping to conclusions. It does bother me that people on both extremes of this debate, within a day or two of this case even happening, had already decided that everything that had happened confirmed their pre-existing view of things, and I just don't think that's a very good approach. The UN Committee, as you know, recommended that Ireland's laws on abortion be liberalised, but they certainly didn't go as far as you're recommending, which is abortion on request or abortion on demand. So I think you're being a little bit selective in using the UN Committee to bolster your case. They have not endorsed your view in relation to abortion. On the Protection of Life in Pregnancy Act, the purpose of that Act was to do two things. Yes, it was to confirm the general prohibition on abortion in the state. It was also there to codify and provide in the law for legal terminations of pregnancies where a life was at risk. And a termination of pregnancy did occur in the case that you refer to, but it occurred by caesarean section rather than abortion because of the gestation of the fetus at that point.
Thank you very much. Deputy
Agree with
Daly,
the
1
Minister
minute.
that some of the media commentary has been very unhelpful. However, I don't believe your points about extremes in this debate. The reality has been, as successive opinion poll, one after the other, that the majority of Irish people believe that a woman should have access to a termination in a wide range of circumstances where her health is in danger, where she's the victim of rape, fatal fetal abnormalities and so on, and indeed the recent opinion polls which would also say that in circumstance that we should be having a repeal of the 8th Amendment, given that most of us weren't around when that legislation was put in. And you see, what the UN Human Rights Committee actually said was that we should look at legislating for those circumstances, including looking at the difficulties being caused to this situation by our constitutional scenario, which ludicrously and appallingly equates the life of a grown woman with that of a fetus. That's what they asked us to look at. That's the truth. I'm sorry if you don't like it. And what I'm asking you, as a young man, do you not think that it's a bit ridiculous that we enacted legislation here that would ever only deal with a tiny minority of women who need to secure an abortion where their life is in danger? But for each of those women, there are thousands of other Irish women every year who we are saying have a constitutional right to have an abortion in England or in Holland, but they cannot access that medical treatment here at home. Do you not, as a doctor and a young man, think that that is not an abomination in the modern era?